Vanessa twirled in her midnight blue silk dress, the dim chandelier lights casting a soft glow on her flawless skin. The air buzzed with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Her friends, colleagues, and socialite acquaintances surrounded her, showering her with praise, compliments, and expensive gifts. It was her night, her moment. Jake stood in the corner, a glass of whiskey in hand, his grip firm but relaxed. His dark eyes followed Vanessa's every move, his expression unreadable. He watched the way she laughed, the way she leaned in, just a little too closely when certain guests spoke to her, the way she played the role of the perfect wife, charming and elegant. She thought she had fooled him, the whisper-soft conversations late at night, the hastily deleted messages, the sudden obsession with evening yoga classes. Vanessa had woven her web of deception, thinking Jake was too blind, too trusting, too oblivious to notice. She was wrong. He had known for weeks. No, he had known for months. But confrontation wasn't his style. He wasn't the kind of man to explode in rage or throw accusations in the heat of the moment. That would be too easy, too merciful. No, Jake believed in something far more satisfying. Patience. He had spent weeks meticulously collecting evidence, setting his trap, waiting for the right moment. And tonight? Tonight was perfect. "To Vanessa!" Someone cheered, raising a glass. A chorus of voices followed, echoing her name. She beamed, her smile radiant, her eyes glistening with satisfaction. Jake took a slow sip of his whiskey, letting the burn settle in his throat before stepping forward. He tapped his glass lightly with a silver spoon, the soft chime cutting through the noise. The room fell into a respectful hush. Vanessa turned to him, her eyes shining. "Jake, darling," she purred, placing a hand on his arm. "You've been so quiet tonight. Are you finally going to say something sweet?" Jake smiled. Calm, collected, unreadable. "Course, babe. I've been working on something special for you." Her expression flickered for the briefest second. Something in his tone made her pause, but she quickly recovered, nodding eagerly. "A surprise? Oh, how exciting." Jake turned toward the large projector screen set up at the far end of the room. "I made a little video for you," he said smoothly. A murmur rippled through the guests. Some clapped politely, others leaned in, curious. Vanessa laughed lightly, playing along. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life. And then her world collapsed. A grainy video filled the screen, the timestamp marking it just 2 nights ago. The footage showed a hotel room, room 612 of the Grand Westwood Hotel. The camera angle, perfectly positioned, captured everything in excruciating clarity. The door opened. A woman in a red coat walked in. Vanessa. Gasps echoed through the room. Jake didn't blink. The birthday party had just begun. The silence was deafening. The birthday celebration, once brimming with laughter and admiration, now felt suffocating. The air, thick with disbelief, hung heavy as the video played. Vanessa stood frozen, her perfectly rehearsed smile vanishing like a wisp of smoke. She could feel the blood draining from her face, her pulse pounding against her temples. A sickening coldness settled in her stomach. On the screen, the footage continued. She watched herself remove the red coat, tossing it onto the hotel bed with casual ease. Beneath it, a black lace dress. One Jake had bought for her anniversary last year. How ironic. The Vanessa on-screen checked her reflection in the mirror, smoothing her hair, adjusting her neckline, anticipation flickering in her eyes. Then the door opened again. A man stepped inside. Ryan. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone let out a hushed expletive. A woman in the back murmured, "Oh my God." Vanessa's hands curled into trembling fists. She wanted to move, to speak, to do something, anything. But her body refused to obey. She turned her gaze to Jake, desperate to find some trace of mercy in his expression. But there was none. He was watching her, calm and passive, his whiskey glass now resting on the table beside him. His patience had always been unnerving, but tonight it was downright terrifying. The video continued. On-screen, Ryan leaned in, whispering something in Vanessa's ear. She laughed, soft, teasing. He pulled her closer, pressing his lips against her neck. The way she melted into his touch, the ease with which she surrendered, there was no denying what was happening. No room for explanation. No excuse that could save her now. More murmurs. A few guests turned their faces away, either out of discomfort or sheer secondhand humiliation. Others, the ones who thrived on scandal, leaned in with wide, eager eyes. The camera angle shifted, a new clip began. This time, it was a series of screenshots, messages. Vanessa's text to Ryan, filled with dangerous confessions. "I wish I could spend every night with you." Jake suspects nothing. He's so clueless. You make me feel alive in a way he never could. The room felt colder. Jake took a step forward. He hadn't spoken since the video started. He didn't need to. Vanessa turned to the crowd, panic setting in. This isn't what it looks like, she choked out, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake finally spoke. No? He gestured toward the screen, where a final image appeared. A hotel bill, room service for 2, a checkout time of 5:42 a.m. Ryan's name listed alongside hers. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Ryan, who had been standing near the bar, shifted uncomfortably. His bravado, his usual smug confidence, was nowhere to be found. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, and the moment he glanced at the screen, his face twisted in horror. Jake noticed. He smirked. Your wife got the same video, Ryan. Ryan's face drained of all color. His fingers tightened around the phone as he swiped frantically, reading the messages. His wife... Oh, God, she knew. Vanessa's breath hitched. She was suffocating. Her world was imploding before her eyes. The people she had surrounded herself with, the very guests she had invited to celebrate her, were now looking at her with nothing but disgust and pity. The silence was unbearable. Jake reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a manila envelope and tossed it onto the table in front of Vanessa. Divorce papers, he said, his voice steady, controlled. Already signed? Vanessa's vision blurred. Happy birthday, babe. Jake picked up his whiskey glass, took a slow sip, then turned his back on her, and with that he walked away, leaving her in the ruins of her perfect life. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating, swallowing Vanessa whole. The moment that was supposed to be her triumphant night had unraveled into her worst nightmare. The weight of 100 eyes pressed down on her, judging, condemning, reveling in her humiliation. She could hear her own heartbeat, rapid and erratic, like a trapped animal desperate for escape. The video had stopped playing, but its impact lingered like an open wound. The whispers were growing louder now, spreading through the room like wildfire. Did you see that? I knew she was shady. And Ryan, his wife, must be losing it right now. Vanessa's breath came in short, shallow gasps. Her fingers twitched toward the divorce papers on the table, but she couldn't bring herself to touch them. They felt like a death sentence. She turned, her eyes frantically searching for Jake in the sea of faces. He was walking away, just like that. No screaming, no rage, no pleading. He didn't need to. His silence was more devastating than any outburst could ever be. Jake, wait, she croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't stop. Her panic surged. This couldn't be happening. She had always been in control, always known how to manipulate a situation in her favor. But not this time. The sound of a glass shattering jolted her back. One of the guests, a woman in a navy gown, had dropped her drink, too stunned to hold it. Ryan's voice suddenly cut through the chaos. This is insane, he snapped, shoving his phone into his pocket. His hands were shaking. Jake, this is going too far. Jake finally stopped. He turned just slightly, raising an eyebrow. Too far? His voice was calm, almost amused. Farther than screwing my wife in my own bed? The room inhaled collectively. Vanessa winced. She knew Jake, knew the way he measured his words, the way he let people dig their own graves before he buried them. Ryan's jaw clenched. Look, man, let's be real. Your marriage was dead long before I came into the picture. Vanessa's not happy. Jake held up a hand, cutting him off effortlessly. You're making a lot of assumptions, Ryan. Let's test them, shall we? From his pocket, he pulled out another phone. One Vanessa had never seen before. He tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward Ryan. The color drained from Ryan's face. His wife's name flashed across the screen. Sarah? A moment later, her voice filled the air, crackling through the room speakers. Ryan, she said, her voice eerily calm. I hope you had fun, because by the time you get home, the locks will be changed, the kids know, my lawyer knows, and now the whole damn city knows. The recording ended. Ryan stood still as stone, his lips pressed into a thin line. Then he snapped, you son of a... He lunged, but Jake had been expecting it. With an effortless sidestep, he dodged the attack, and Ryan stumbled forward, nearly crashing into a table. Two men, guests who were clearly on Jake's side, grabbed Ryan's arms before he could try again. Jake didn't even flinch. He simply took another sip of whiskey, completely unfazed. You should leave, Ryan, he said coolly, before you embarrass yourself any further. Ryan wrenched himself free, his breaths ragged. This isn't over, Jake smirked. For you, it absolutely is. Ryan hesitated for just a second, then with one final glare, he stormed out, shoving past stunned guests on his way to the exit. Vanessa was still frozen in place, her mind racing for a way out. But there wasn't one. Her friends weren't meeting her eyes. The guests who had once admired her were now whispering behind their hands. Then the final blow came. One of her colleagues, her closest colleague, picked up her glass, smiled sweetly, and raised it high. Jake, she said, her voice clear and strong, a beat of silence. Then, one by one, more glasses lifted into the air. Jake, Jake, to Jake. It was over. Vanessa staggered back, her hands shaking. She had lost everything. Vanessa stood alone in the center of the room, her body trembling as the weight of her downfall settled over her. Her birthday party, her grand, meticulously planned celebration, had become a funeral for her reputation, her marriage, and everything she had taken for granted. She had thought she was untouchable, that she could control the narrative, spin her way out of anything. But this was beyond repair. The room was still filled with guests, but now the space between them and Vanessa felt like a canyon. People whispered behind hands, their eyes darting toward her like she was some tragic character in a cautionary tale. Jake was gone. He had walked out without a single backward glance. Ryan had fled in disgrace, his marriage crumbling just as swiftly as her own. And now Vanessa was left to face the wreckage. She needed air. Her legs felt weak as she forced herself toward the exit, the once friendly crowd parting as she moved, as if they feared association with her would somehow taint them. She caught snippets of their hushed conversations. I can't believe it. Right in her own bed. Jake planned this perfectly. He let her dig her own grave. She always acted like she was better than everyone. Look at her now. Outside, the night air was sharp and cruel against her burning cheeks. Her heart pounded. Her hands shook. She reached for her phone with fumbling fingers, dialing the one person who had always been able to fix things. Jake, straight to voicemail. Her breath hitched. She tried again and again, but blocked. A sob bubbled in her throat, but she swallowed it down. No. She wasn't going to fall apart. She had to fix this. Frantic, she scrolled through her contacts and dialed Ryan. He answered, but his voice was nothing like the arrogant, cocky tone he usually had. It was low, seething. What the hell do you want, Vanessa? She swallowed. We need to figure this out. We need to talk. Ryan let out a humorless laugh. Talk? Are you serious? Wait, what, fix this? He snapped. You think this is something we can just smooth over? My wife just sent me a text saying she's taking the kids and I won't see them again unless it's through a damn lawyer. My career is over. And you want to talk? Vanessa squeezed her eyes shut, her breath coming in uneven gasps. I didn't know Jake would. Oh, shut up, Vanessa, Ryan cut in. He played us. You think he just found out? He's been sitting on this, waiting for the perfect time to burn us alive. She gritted her teeth. So what do we do? Ryan was silent for a long moment. Then his voice dropped to something cold and distant. I don't do anything with you, he said. We're done. The call ended. Vanessa stared at her screen in disbelief. Done? After everything? She had destroyed her marriage, her image, her entire life. And now Ryan was just walking away? Her knees buckled and she had to grip the stone railing of the hotel's entrance to steady herself. The weight of it all pressed down on her, squeezing the air from her lungs. Jake had won, not just in proving her guilt, but in ensuring she lost everything. Panic surged inside her. She needed to see him, to beg, to plead, to explain. She rushed to the parking valet. Jake Lawson, what car did he leave in? The attendant, a young man who had been watching the drama unfold inside, looked at her with something between pity and amusement. Sorry, ma'am, he said, not sounding sorry at all. Mr. Lawson left 20 minutes ago. Vanessa's hands clenched into fists. Gone. Her breath hitched as she turned away, her mind spinning. There had to be a way out of this, a way to salvage something, anything. Then her phone vibrated in her palm. A new text. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. From Jake. Don't bother reaching out. We're done. Enjoy your birthday. It's the last one you'll celebrate as my wife. Her stomach dropped. And for the first time that night, Vanessa realized this wasn't just a setback. This was the end. Vanessa stood motionless, staring at the message on her phone. The words blurred as tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of the hotel staff. Not in front of the guests who still lingered, whispering about her. Her fingers trembled as she typed a response. Let's talk. She hit send. 3 dots appeared. Her breath caught. Then they disappeared. Vanessa felt like the ground beneath her had vanished. She had always believed she could talk her way out of anything, but this time, there was nothing left to say. Jake was done with her. Her hands gripped the edges of her dress as she turned, walking aimlessly down the quiet sidewalk. Her heels clicked against the pavement, the sound eerily hollow in the night. Her phone buzzed again. For a split second, hope flared, but it wasn't Jake. It was an unknown number. Vanessa, this is Sarah. I hope you understand that I'll be making sure you and Ryan get everything you deserve. See you in court. Her breath hitched. Ryan's wife, of course. This wasn't just about her marriage. She had destroyed his too. Sarah wasn't going to let them walk away unscathed. Her fingers tightened around the phone as she forced herself to move. She needed to go home, think, figure out a way to salvage something from this wreckage. But when she finally arrived at the house she had shared with Jake, reality came crashing down again. The driveway was empty. Jake's car was gone. The porch light, usually left on for her, was off. She hesitated before stepping inside, her breath unsteady as she opened the door. The house felt different, colder, and then she saw it. On the dining table, in the same spot where they had shared countless meals, sat another envelope. Inside were the finalized divorce papers, and beneath them, Jake's wedding ring. A lump formed in her throat. She had worn that ring for over a decade, but now, holding it in her palm, it felt like a relic from another life. She wanted to scream, to break something, to make it all disappear. Instead, she sank into the nearest chair, pressing the ring into her palm so hard it left an imprint. She had lost him. Not just the marriage, not just the security, but him. The man who had once adored her, the man who had trusted her, the man she had taken for granted. And the worst part, she had done this to herself. Her birthday had started as a night of celebration. It had ended in total ruin, and there was no coming back from it.